Shalom, shalom, shalom to everyone watching. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero with the Ways of Israel, continuing in the series called Mashiach 6000. We're going to take a look at the intensification of evil before Geula, before the redemption. As the years go by, we see more stress and tribulation coming upon the Jewish people. And as it says in Psalms 20, verse 2, may Hashem answer you, may the Lord answer you on the day of your distress, the day of your tribulation. This can be compared to a father and a son who were working and walking along the road, and the son became tired. And he said to his father, "Where is the town we are going to?" The father answered, "My son, this is the town we are going to." And the father answered, "My son, this is the sign that we are approaching. When you see a cemetery, you can be sure that the town is near." Likewise, the Holy One, blessed be He, said, "If you see that trouble engulfs you, know that soon you will be redeemed." The Midrash Tehillim, chapter 20. The more deeply we examine the situation, the clearer it becomes that the Creator has placed our generation into a unique and fateful juncture of history. We must ponder this and act accordingly. The duration of the world as we know it, where free will and mortality exist as a result of Adam's sin, was set at 6,000 years. Thus, my whole entire series based upon Mashiach 6000. Of this writing, we're now in 5785, and more than 98% of the time has already elapsed, and in the remaining and the remaining percentage is unique events that will take place, some of which will be described in the following. At the time of the Exodus from Egypt, the Lord told Moshe to inform the children of Israel of the impending redemption that was going to take place. Afterwards, Moshe was commanded to go to Pharaoh and ask him to let the people leave Egypt. Pharaoh refused to listen to the Lord and hardened his heart and made conditions harsher for them. It wasn't an automatic freedom. The Jewish people complained to Moshe that his request to the Pharaoh had made things worse for them. Moshe returned to God and asked him, "Why have you done evil to this people? Why have you sent me? From time I came to Pharaoh to the time I spoke to you in your name, he did evil to this people, but you did not rescue your people." Exodus chapter 5, verse 22 through 23. God answered him, "Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will drive them out from this land." Exodus chapter 6, verse 21. You know, whenever it gets worse, people complain, "Oh, you're not fulfilling your promise." Very similar, in parallel, with what we're seeing with happening with Trump and his terrorist war. Hold on tight. It's going to get better. Now you will see what I will do to the Pharaoh. And as it says, for with a strong hand he will send them out. With a strong hand he will drive them from the land. Exodus chapter 6, verse 1. The Kli Kilar explains this dialogue between God and Moshe as follows. I'm sure you've seen videos of people recording while their dog completely goes wacko over another dog. Well, the Kli Law explains this dialogue between God and Moshe as follows. Moshe's understanding was that if the decrees on the people became harsher, it must be a sign that the redemption was still far off. That was his complaint, by the way. And why did the Lord command him to tell the people about the redemption was so far in advance? Wouldn't that this discourage them and lead them to despair? The Lord told him he was wrong. The newly increased severity of the Pharaoh's decrees was an optical illusion, so to speak. The harsh decrees were a sign of just the opposite. The redemption was near, more near than they even thought. Now you will see that the Lord said to Moses, "The redemption is closer than ever, but when the evil is about to complete its mission in this world, it gets more intense in the attempt to the last of a bit longer and its final death throes." We can see that this tendency in nature, and it's true that the Creator made it dark during the night, but it is also possible to see that the light of the stars. But towards the morning, before the sun shines, the darkness becomes more intense than during the rest of the night. Similarly, it's the coldest just before daybreak. Why? Why is this the case? This is the way of the world. When a natural force nears its end, it shows stronger resistance, so to speak, to it. In a battle to survive, if we examine them more deeply, we will see that the intensification of darkness is what indicates that the coming light is approaching. And so, in the spiritual realm, when evil gets stronger, the increased power is itself a sign that the evil is about to give way to the redemption waiting to emerge. The final exile is the hardest exile of all, and towards its end, the darkest. God will hide his face more than before. Atheism, insolence, rebelliousness, and quote-unquote a resistance to all that is good and godly will arise. We're seeing that today, by the way. The world will become more materialistic, more in favor of the opposite value system of godly value system. Sexual morality will no longer exist. Faith will be pushed into a corner, and man will rely on none other but himself and his own power, as he has forgotten his essential characteristics, that of being created in the image of God. This is more than anything shows that the imminent redemption is very unique, and man's evil inclination will leave him, and the world will return to the state it was before Adam sinned. This is why evil will become so much stronger in this time, this era. Sages tell us in Midrash Daniel chapter 12 verse 11 that the verse, "And there will be a time of distress like of which there has never been, but when they became a nation until that time, and at that time your people will escape," it says in Daniel chapter 12 verse 1. And this refers to the birth pang of Mashiach. Just as a woman is in childbirth and has no greater moment of distress than the moment of birth, which is followed by relief and reaffirmation of life, so it will be for the Jewish people at that time. They will experience relief and salvation from their enemies when Mashiach is revealed, and no longer will they suffer anguish and sorrow. In this vein, the prophet Jeremiah said that when he foresaw the birth pang of Mashiach, "Ask now and see if a male has ever given birth. Why then do I see that every man puts his hand upon his loins, like a woman in childbirth, and all the faces turn pale. Woe! For that day will be momentous. There is nothing like it. It will be a time of distress of Yaakov, or what they call Jacob's tribulation. But he will be saved from it." Notice it says he will be saved from it. Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 6 through 7. Now, interesting enough, the Chofetz Chaim writes, "The day of exile are like a pregnancy, and the end like the contraction of labor. With contraction of labor, it is known that a woman, if is having a hard time giving birth, when the difficulties overcome her to the point where she can't bear any longer, the midwife will comfort her by saying that the pains won't last much longer. She will say, 'Don't be afraid. This is a sign that the birth is near. This is exactly how it is in this manner. As long as there are many troubles, were not overwhelming, we could think that the pregnancy would continue for a long time, but now the troubles are so strong that they are unbearable, and we can certainly look forward to the revelation of his salvation very soon. Shem Olam, in the name of the Vilna Gaon, stated this. Now we must understand, however, that there is another reason for the intensification of evil, and that has to do with the separations between the forces of good and evil. The Gemara says, this is the same Gemara that we're going to be looking a little bit deeper into in Sanhedrin, chapter 98 and 98a, A and B. The son of David, Mashiach, will come only in a generation that is entirely unworthy or entirely worthy. The Vilna Gaon explains that this is not to be taken at face value. We can understand the possibility of a generation that is entirely worthy. This would mean a generation where everyone has repented. But how can there be a generation that is entirely unworthy? Isn't there a divine promise that the Torah will never be forgotten from the Jewish people? Also, don't we have a tradition that in every generation there are 36 hidden tzaddikims in whose merit the world continues to exist? This is the idea also stated by the prophets. So the Lord said, if not for my covenant with the night and the day, if I had not set up the laws of heaven and earth, what would happen? Devastation. Destruction. Jeremiah 33, verse 25. What is the covenant which causes day and night to exist? The covenant of circumcision that takes place only once in a lifetime, of the covenant of Shabbat, which is kept only one day a week. What is the covenant that is maintained constantly both day and night? This must be the covenant of the Torah. It could only be the covenant of the Torah which the Jewish people learn day and night, that sustains and maintains the world. This is why the world was created as a rotating globe. When the people are asleep on one side of the earth, the sun shines on the other side of the earth, and the Jews can there study Torah. The Vilna Gaon explains that this generation spoken of here will be like any other, with both righteous and evildoers. The words of the Gemara will apply to each individual. Every individual will follow a set course, either towards utopian perfection or absolute evil. Little by little, the numbers of those who waver between the two directions will disappear, for each one of them will decide on the other two. The Vilna Gaon words are apt even for our times. For when evil increases its power, it becomes more obvious than ever. And when it is clear there is no longer any middle ground, when evil is exposed for what it is, it loses its allure. Then people will become stronger in their desire to do good, and move towards become stronger in their desire to do good, and their desire to the ultimate perfection. So we can explain the same thing here in the vein of the Mishnah. At the end of Sota, we quoted at the beginning of this video, or the previous video, Sota 49b. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi listed 15 serious matters that will characterize the end of days. The government will turn to heresy. The meeting places will turn to licentiousness. And he does not mean that the entire Jewish people will reach that state, but those who left the Torah path will want to attain evil in its totality, in its depravity. In this framework, they will even go as far as doing the things mentioned above. In short, the footsteps of Mashiach, evil will increase in the world and readily be apparent. There's obviously some important things that we will see in all of this. In the short time of the footsteps of Mashiach that I mentioned already in the video about the footsteps of Mashiach, it will increase in the world and will be readily apparent. This is good news for the approaching redemption, for many will learn to identify that for what it is. Then they will abandon it and improve themselves in direction of absolute good. Others who also search for perfection in their way will become more evil and will distance themselves completely from Judaism. A painful, obvious example of this is the estrangement from Judaism and the belittling of the values is the opening of restaurants and cafes, for example, in Tel Aviv and on Tisha B'Av, as a major Israeli newspaper commented. On the eve of Tisha B'Av, when the Jewish nation in Israel, in the diaspora, gathers in mourning over the destruction of the temple and recites lamentation, pleasure seekers in Tel Aviv and around the world were having a good time drinking beer, whiskey, and going about their normal day, drinking, good time, cavorting as it were, drinking beer and whiskey, pointedly ignoring their Jewish heritage as it was wanted in no part of the Jewish people. The person responsible for this disgusting trend on business opening on the Jewish people's most major day of mourning in Tel Aviv was a mayor there called Ron Huldai. Knesset member Tommy Lapid, who has often spoken of his hedonism on radio TV, responded, "What's wrong with drinking beer and having a bit of conversation?" He has asked again, isn't this the anniversary of the destruction of both temples? How can a Jew cut himself from his past? To which Lapid replied, "The Haredim are a minority. They're just a small, insignificant group of people among the Jewish people. There is a secularist majority now, and this is what is right." Remember what took place October 7th, which any religious Jew will completely agree. It wasn't just a regular dance. It was just not a regular concert. It was a concert, and everybody noticed that was featuring all types of hedonistic practices. I don't know whose idea it was to set up a big Buddha in the middle of the concert. But one thing is very sure, that when the enemy came over and crossed the border and did the harm that they did, they weren't prepared. While the rest of the Jewish population, religious, were basically finishing to celebrate Simchat Torah and Shemini Atzeret, these in the festival were celebrating something completely contrary to Torah values. And I want to remind you that what came upon the Jewish people can be seen as a direct response from above, from their actions that they were involved in cohorting. No rabbi has ever made that correlation. Yes, it was terrible, and yes, it was wrong, and yes, what they did was horrendous, and it was terrorism at its worst. But we know that in history, there is a hand that moves us through history, and sometimes we have to deal with issues that is not at all happy news. October 7th was one of those events in Jewish history. It was none other than the academians who responded to Lapid. One prominent university dean said, "I live in Ramat Aviv, a predominantly secular area of Tel Aviv, and I'm embarrassed to have brothers such as these who distance themselves from their Jewish past." Professor Moti Kedar of Bar Ilan University castigated those who want to have a good time on Tisha B'Av. He said, "He who has no past has no future." Both Lapid and Ron Huldai lack conscience and culture. And as you see today in Israel, the biggest battle that exists is between, again, the same kinds of people. The secular, completely non-religious Jew, wanting to impose their value that has been demonstrated to be destructive upon all Israel, and that of the religious culture. The conclusion can be arrived at this same idea is very clear. We dealt with at length the matter of Adam eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge, and we explained that when he did this, he joined good with evil, which had until this been separate, thus bringing the evil inclination inside of man. And as a result of this, God decreed that man must die. He set a period of 6,000 years for the rectification of sin. Only at the end of this period will be good and evil again be separate, will be removed. However, as we arrived at this point, good and evil must be separate in creation itself. As we have explained, this will come about through the intensification of evil so that it can be discernible in the world. Then those who wish to can recognize it and distance themselves from it. This is also linked to the coming of Mashiach, when people's choices are not clear and good and evil remains a mixture in the world, and the time is not yet ripe for Mashiach's arrival. But when it is, when good and evil are clearly distinct and separate from each other, redemption will arrive. In addition to this objective, there is another point in making good and evil clearly distinct from each other. The Lord created the force of evil in the world so that man can realize his actual potential. Just as physical activity leads to physical development only after difficult training that entails overcoming obstacles, so it is with the spiritual development. When man contends with various challenges that stands in his way, he becomes stronger, not weaker. It turns out that when evil that exists in creation actually serves as a means to attain goodness, for it is the cause of man putting forth his effort to overcome it. As a result of his effort, man realizes his potential and rises to higher levels of goodness. Unfortunately, however, many people today have adopted evil as their way of life. They have chosen the way of evil than good, and little by little, evil has turned from a means to an end. The sublime objective of man's rectification has fallen by the wayside. And if so, how can evil attain its objective of being a means towards human perfection? The answer to this is very easy, and it's the evil. As evil intensifies, it becomes clearly identifiable, and it causes people to abandon it. Evil thus becomes helpful in turning people to good, and this is the actual evil rectification at the end of days. Take, for example, the aim of many fine people to rid their homes of the television. Whatever causes them to do this, it is the programs themselves, the viewers who watch them, and realize that what they see is evil. What causes many people to refrain from reading the secular press? It's the articles themselves, which have sunk to the lowest level in their reporting and has become defamatory in many regards, which have sunk to the lowest level of the reporting on violence and sexual immorality. Reports that people find revolting. So, it is in the world at large, after waves of permissiveness at the end of the 20th century, a wave of morality and sanity, a wave of ethics and conservative value is sweeping Europe and the United States, and they're saying the same thing. They're revolting from it. It's disgusting. This is why even the social medias need to begin a reformation of their policies as to what is right and what is wrong. There's a lot of shtus, a lot of garbage in these social medias, and then therefore they remove what is good in order to implement what is bad. May God help every one of us to remove ourselves from those elements of bad and evil. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero with the ways of Israel, and may that period come quickly to us so we become so repulsed by all kinds of evil that's facing humanity today. In our next video, we're going to take a look at the 7th millennium. Keep in mind, by the 6th millennium, Mashiach must come. If not, then there's going to be a major crisis in the world regarding their faith in God and in Mashiach. Shalom, shalom. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero with the Ways of Israel.